Welcome back. This time we're talking about the series premiere of MacGyver, CBS's new reboot of the classic television series which ran from 1985 to 1992. Based on this first episode, it appears that they've made some significant changes to the original show's formula. Whether those changes are ultimately good or bad for this version of MacGyver, it's a little too early to say, but after just one episode, I do have some pretty strong opinions about where they're at right now. Now, before I get any further, let me say this review is going to have significant spoilers for just about everything that happened in this first episode. So if you haven't seen it, stop now, go watch it, and then come back. Now, as far as remakes go, I recently said in my review of the Magnificent Seven remake that your opinion of a particular remake is going to be clouded by how emotionally connected you were to the original. In that case, I saw the movie as a child, but I have very little memory of it now. So the fact that they were remaking it was not a huge deal. Now, in the case of MacGyver, I have to say, that was one of my favorite shows growing up. That was the show. I mean, that was a show that I wanted to watch every single week. So I went into this new series with a lot of skepticism on whether or not they were going to be able to recapture that sense of adventure and just MacGyver-ness of the original show. But I also wanted to look at this first episode objectively. So I've tried to take a step back and look at it both as a remake and as a premiere episode of a new television series. And I have to say, on both levels, this episode is pretty bad. Now, as far as the remake side of things, as I said at the beginning, they have made a lot of changes to the formula of the original show. And frankly, I'm not a big fan of them. In the original show, MacGyver would go on various missions. Sometimes he was working for the Phoenix Foundation, sometimes it was DSX, sometimes it was kind of a social justice warrior angle. That was especially in the later seasons. The show kind of evolved into that. But even when he was on these kind of espionage missions, he was always sort of a fixer. He was sent in on these missions that either catered to his skill set or just no one else thought they could do it. Because his style was so different than what you would expect from a spy or anything like that. Here we open up and he's in a tux, which MacGyver would never wear a tux. And I know it's a minor thing, but he's got this team. He's got a computer analyst. He's got George Eads playing Jack Dawson in a complete rewrite of his character. So it's more of a team spy angle, or at least in this first episode. And again, that's all we have right now. So when I look for MacGyver, it's just not really what I'm looking for. We do have the MacGyverisms. We do have the narration like in the original, although it seems a bit forced at times. And then they have to double up and do the little on-screen thing showing paperclip plus this equals that. And it's, I don't know, maybe they're trying to crib off of Mythbusters that did a lot of on-screen notation. That might be where they got that from. I don't know. It's utterly unnecessary in my opinion, especially when you have the narration as he's going over everything. And while we're talking about the narration, I really just didn't like it. It didn't work. I noticed on two separate occasions in this episode that his narration, as far as the emotion of his narration, felt very off considering what we were seeing on screen and where he was at that point in his kind of emotional journey. Again, I've already warned you about spoilers, but with his girlfriend being killed and then the reveal that she wasn't and all that, the narration in those scenes just did not match what we were seeing on screen, and it was honestly very jarring, and it just didn't work. So as a remake of MacGyver, I'm not feeling it, especially in this first episode. But beyond that, let's look at this as a premiere episode of a new show, and we see this as this inventive, resourceful character who's being sent on missions. He's got this backup team with George Eads as Jack Dawson, and Tristin Mays as the hacker Riley, and then Sandrine Holt as Patricia Thornton, this show's version of Pete Thornton from the original. Well, outside of MacGyver, we get very little character development. They throw a lot of characters at us. One who ultimately betrays the team, and it seems pretty obvious that that's the route they're going with it. But even if you didn't see it a mile away, that whole storyline just really doesn't make any sense once you think about it. And I don't really want to get into too much nitpicking, but you have Matt getting shot, you have Jack getting knocked out, and then Nikki apparently being killed. So we don't really know exactly what happened after that point. We jump a few months, pretty much right after that. But they never found her body. They never searched for it. They just leave it there. I mean, even if they had left it there, they're in a civilized country. It would have ended up in a morgue somewhere. So the whole her not being dead angle it really doesn't make any sense if you put any thought to it. And while we're talking about Nikki, her motivations and her character, which apparently are going to be important because she escapes at the end, so I'm guessing she's going to at least for some time be a recurring villain, is that, first it's money. We find out that there was like $5 million put into an account in her mother's name. But then she claims that it's ideological, and she starts talking about overpopulation and all of this. And then she starts talking about her bosses, so she's now part of an organization. And apparently their goal was to get this biological weapon. So let's take her at face value, that she has bosses, and that they sent her in to infiltrate DXS. And it's amazing how hard it is to say DXS correctly. I think I've already said it wrong once earlier. Beside the point. So that she's infiltrated into this organization that is apparently so secret that the CIA doesn't even know about it. We don't know what their end game is because we're given very little information. But apparently they wanted to steal this biological weapon, which was about to be sold on the black market so some terrorist organization could use it. They stole it so they could then sell it themselves to another terrorist organization so they could use it. And if you believe her ideological comment when confronted by Mac, that this was part of some endgame to better the world, okay, maybe that makes sense. To me, it really doesn't. It seems overly convoluted, especially when it was going to be used somewhere. But even if that is the case, why blow the cover of your undercover agent? There's no reason that her cover needs to be blown. He could have shot her in a way that didn't kill her, steal the biological. They could still sell it. And the end game still happens like they wanted to, and their undercover mole is still undercover. It makes no sense that they blow her cover at that point, unless she's like working for herself. She doesn't have bosses, and her end game was to get that biological. Then again, how long has she been with DXS? That this was her end game, or was this something that just popped up? Again, I don't know, but it makes no sense at this point. Maybe they can clear it up, but for a first episode, this was a very convoluted story that did not draw me in like, ooh, there's going to be this long-term storyline, especially when the characters themselves are not really drawing me in for a case of the week type scenario, which I'm assuming is going to be the majority of the show. Now, it has to be noted, and I don't know how much validity there were to these reports, but I've read that there was major rewrites, major reshoots when the initial trailer came out for the pilot, and it was very not well received by fans. So I don't know how true that is, but if it is, I don't know if this episode is a hastily recut version of what they were attempting to do the first time, or if this was a hastily rewritten, reshot new story that they had to get out quickly, and thus is the mess that we get. I don't know. So that's the main reason why I'm going to try to give this show a few more episodes to see if it can find an even keel here of enjoyable action and solid characters, because I did not get that in this first episode. But again, as a fan of the original MacGyver, I wasn't hoping that this was going to be bad. So again, on that level, I'm also hoping that this show can find some kind of balance and improve over what I thought was a very poor first episode. So it seems pretty obvious at this point I was not a fan of this first episode. I have no reason to hope that the show is going to get better, but I'm hoping that it does, both because this show has potential, and as a fan of MacGyver, I would not mind a decent MacGyver remake. It's not something I was asking for, but if they're going to give it to us, they might as well make it good. So if you've seen this first episode, let me know what you thought about it, especially if you are a fan of the original, or if you're not. Let me know either way. As always, you can subscribe to my channel, check out some of my other TV or movie reviews, and until next time, never leave home without a paperclip.